And I'm back. So let's continue. Now that we have understood how we can access the research, the secondary data, remember primary data is that which we will create and we will do when we do our research, but all secondary data, in order to create the literature review, has a process that we have to follow, and we'll call that literature search project. So first of all, there are 3 forms of databases that we can access in order to create our literature review. The first one is the bibliographic databases, which only display the bibliographic citations, which is the author, the title of the article or book, source of publication, year, volume, and page numbers. Then there are abstract databases, which in addition to all of the information that I've just previously mentioned, also includes an abstract or a summary. An abstract, you know, is a small summary, basically, it's synonym of the articles. And then the full text databases provide the full text of the article. And these databases are also available for obtaining statistics, whether it's for your marketing project, for a financial project, for an audit, etc. When we do an online search, obviously, like I mentioned before, going to the library is actually quite time consuming and a big effort when we compare to how much we can get done doing a search online. So I recommend using online searches for your literature search process, because first of all, you're going to save a lot of time. Like I said, you have to go to various libraries just to get the same book, where you can do it literally in seconds online. Online searches are obviously very comprehensive, and you can access information that you wouldn't any other way. For example, I'm able to access the American Library of Congress database here from Spain. How would I be able to go to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. in person? So obviously it gives you a lot of information that would not be accessible to you otherwise. The researcher can also weed out and focus on the most relevant review that they have found that is important for their research. You can weed out all of the rest, and it's relatively inexpensive. There are some websites that make you pay a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription in order to be able to access their databases, but most of them are free of charge. And of course, you're going to get a very comprehensive bibliography on that specific problem area or subject, which is going to give you basically the stepping stone for your next process. So once you have created the bibliography or the literature review on the subject, what the researcher needs to do is, first of all, weed out, like I said, weed out the good from the bad. Take a look at the titles or the articles of the books, which will already explain to you in a very quick glance whether or not that book is going to be relevant to your research. If, for example, your research is about purple water bottles, and the book is about the use of colors in water bottles, that one will be relevant to you. But perhaps if the book is titled Water Bottles, Plastic or Paper, then you know that won't be necessary to you, or it won't be helpful to you. Then when you're able to access abstract of specific articles or journals or online resources, remember that that gives you a summary, a very summarized version of what you can use, of what is part of the content of that specific research paper. And this gives you very good feedback and very good insight exactly in order for you to be able to determine if that specific source is going to be useful for your research project or not. And of course, if you have the option of having the full text, then great. You can download it. You can look at it for future reference. Perhaps if it's a 20-page document, you can read the whole thing and see if it's valid to you. However, if it's 200 pages, maybe you don't want to waste time, and you can even run a search based on keywords. So purple water bottles, for example, in this case. And of course, while you are reading, have a notebook handy or have your computer handy, take notes about the problem, see the design details of the study, what was the approach that they used in order to create this research project, like for example, the data collection methods, the sample size, etc. And then the findings. Perhaps the findings of the study are inconclusive, perhaps they are useful for your research project, perhaps they're actually detrimental to your research project. So it's very important that you also review the findings of each research. And obviously these notes, the more information you have, the better. But I recommend you do bullet points. You don't have to actually write out full sentences, bullet points of the main points of each book and of each paper, because this is going to help you write up the literature review in a very efficient way. So when we actually think about the literature review write-up, we have to document only the most relevant sources that we're going to use. If you are not going to use, if you, for example, have found 20 online sources and you have decided not to use 5 of them, don't include those in the literature review. You've accessed them, you've evaluated whether or not they're going to be helpful to you. They're not, you're not going to use them, don't include them in the literature review. And the literature review, when you start addressing this, remember that it is a very clear and logical presentation of the relevant research work that has been done up to today on your specific research topic. Now, that doesn't mean that things may change. So you may have to update this if, for example, you're doing a research project that will span a period of 2 years, for example. And when we talk about the literature survey or review, it's very important that we identify and highlight the important variables, such as significant findings from other research that has been done, because this will serve as a foundation where you can create the theoretical framework for the current research that you're doing. And then from there, develop the hypothesis per specific possible outcomes or findings of your research. And remember that this information is important in order to convince the reader, first of all, that you, the researcher, are knowledgeable about the problem area. Number 2, that the theoretical framework is structured on work that has been already done and will have a very solid existing knowledge database in order from which you will use that as a stepping stone in order to create your research. So here there's a different literature survey examples. This one is about organizational effectiveness. You guys can read this on the PowerPoint presentation that I will upload. And remember that the literature review actually introduces the subject of study. It highlights the problem. For example, here we can see in this example here, we can see that we do not have a good conceptual framework for understanding organizational effectiveness, OE, and it summarizes the work done so far on the topic because, in brackets, it reports the citations in the body of research by mentioning the family names and the year of publication only. So this is regarding here. We can see this. This is an example of a literature review. And after the literature review, now the researcher is in a position to weed down and narrow down the problem from the original broad base and define the issues that cause concern much more clearly. Which brings us to defining the problem statement. The problem statement is what introduces the key problem that is going to be addressed in the research project. And the problem statement has to be clear, precise, and short. So that it is addressing the specific issue that you want to investigate. So for example, my problem statement will be, I want to see what the color purple and how it affects having water bottles that are purple. Or perhaps what I want to study is, do purple bottles get more volume of sales than green bottles, shall we say. And there are 3 key criteria that we need to use to assess the quality of the problem statement. Number 1, is it feasible? Is it relevant? Excuse me. Is it feasible? Number 2, and is it interesting? we can consider a research relevant or a problem statement relevant if, number one, nothing is known about the topic. Nobody has done this research before. Nobody has been interested in seeing if purple water bottles will be sold more than green water bottles. So it's going to be relevant. Or if much is known about the topic, but the knowledge is scattered, perhaps because the findings have been very different among themselves, or perhaps because there hasn't been one central research study, which gathers and collects all of this information and puts it all into one document. Or, as I just mentioned before, there's a lot of research, but the findings, the conclusions are contradictory. They're very different. Or there are specific relationships that are not holding up in certain situations. Like if we found one finding is finding A, but if we test the same situation and change one element, we see that the finding is B, so they don't hold up. The problem statement is feasible if you are able to answer the problem statement without the restrictions of the research project. Excuse me, I don't want to cover this. Within the restrictions of the research project. So these restrictions are related to time, money, and expertise of the researcher. If there is a problem that the researcher may find too difficult to answer, then the statement will not be feasible, obviously. So it is very important that when we define the problem statement, we develop a narrowly defined question that can be investigated with a reasonable amount of time and efforts. Let's not try to study the effects of global warming over the span of 300 years, because that's never gonna be something feasible. And the statement has to be interesting, since research is going to be very time consuming, and it's not something that's done in 1 day or two. You're going to be going through lots of challenges. It's very important that you find something that you are interested in the problem statement. You find something that you are passionate about and interested about, so you can stay motivated throughout the entire process. If you are considering doing a thesis, for example, do the thesis on something that is interesting and that you are passionate about. If you hate poetry, for example, don't do a thesis about poetry, because perhaps you will be working on this for years and years and you will end up hating poetry. And what can we see? Some well-designed examples of the problem statement. Number one, to what extent do the structure of the organization and type of information systems installed account for the variance in perceived effectiveness of managerial decision-making? To what extent has the new advertising campaign been successful in creating the corporate image that we want to produce? How has the new packaging affected the sale of our product? And what are the effects of downsizing on long-range growth patterns of companies? These are very well structured. They're easy to understand. They are logical, and they are not easy to answer, but it is easy to use them as a stepping stone in order to know how, in what direction our research should go. And when we talk about the research process and literature reviews, we always have to address bibliographies, because the bibliographies are the way that we can show that our research project has not just been based on primary data, it's also been based on secondary data. So therefore it is very complete and thorough work of study. And there's a specific way to citing sources in bibliographies. There are 3 widely accepted modes of referencing in business research. One is the APA format, one is the Chicago Manual of Style, and one is the Turatian style. Here in SSBR, we use the APA format, as you guys know, and that's what I'm going to focus on at this moment. So how do we cite work by a single author? Always last name, and then the initial of the first name, the initial of the middle name. In parentheses, we put the year of publication, dot, then the title of the book, dot, the publication house, comma, where it was. Here it's in New Jersey. Sorry, This is the publication house, excuse me, the location, comma, the state, this is the United States, and then colon, the publication house. And if the book is by more than one author, you usually put it first name by, by alphabetical order or by contribution. If one author, there's one main author and then there are co-authors, you should state the one main author first. If not, then use alphabetizing. So you put the last name, comma, first name. If they don't have a middle name, that's okay, you don't put it, comma, last name, first name, and then comma, and we don't just put comma, comma, comma. And then the same as here, the year, the title, city, and the publishing house. And if there's more than one book by the same author in the same year, we use the same exact format, except we first put the book A and change the year, put the year and then followed by an A, and then also the year followed by a B, and so on and so forth. What else? When we're looking at actual journals, academic journals or sectorial journals, industry journals, this is how we cite. We have to actually specify the pages. So here we have the last name and the first initial, the year, the name of the article, the name of the academic or industry journal, the edition, so that would be number 79 of the Journal of Social Psychology, pages 25 to 33. And this is the same thing when we are referencing more than one author, the same thing, using the same format. Remember, you have to put the number, the addition of the number. So this is number 43 of the Journal of Social Work Studies and the pages. And when it's doctor or master dissertations, we would put this way. There's no publishing house, so we just put the name of the actual university. And when we do newspaper articles, we have to put the title first. We don't put the author yet. We put the title first, the year, the date, comma, the date, dot, name of the publication, the page. And then when we look at online sources, for example, we put the author, Perez, comma, L, that's me, the year, the name of the title. We have to specify that it is online, and we have to give and include the online link. And remember, when more than one author has to be cited, they should either be done in the alphabetical order of the first author's last name, and always separate the citations by semicolons, like this. And as I mentioned before, if there is one main author with other co-authors, but that didn't contribute as significantly to the book, then you can cite it in order, first putting the main author and then in alphabetical order the rest. Thank you so much. Today we had a bit of a shorter class. Next week, remember, your first assignment is due on Monday morning. We have our first webinar. I hope to see all of you guys there, because I'm going to be reviewing your assignment in detail. Remember that you guys in this course only have 2 assignments. It's very important that we know how to address them properly so that you guys can be very successful in both assignments. I hope you have a good week, and I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.